You set the phone down after an hour, and your head feels like wet cotton. Thoughts slide off before you can finish them. Somewhere in that fog, you reached a quiet verdict. Your brain is rotting. Hold on to that word for a second. It is about to mislead you, because what the research actually describes is stranger than decay, and far easier to undo than you would ever guess. Start with the finding that genuinely unsettled me. When researchers compared heavy media multitaskers to lighter ones, the heavy group turned out worse at ignoring distractions, not better. Ophir and colleagues reported that back in 2009, the people most certain they could juggle everything were the ones measurably struggling to filter anything. So the real question is not whether scrolling costs you something. It is what, precisely, is being drained, and whether it refills. Take the word rot literally for a moment. Rot means tissue dying and not coming back. Is that what one long night of scrolling does inside your skull? For most people, the honest reading of the current evidence is no. Reviews of digital media and the brain, like Montag's team in 2019, do flag real changes worth watching, but nothing resembling the permanent crumbling that the word rot quietly promises. So why does it feel exactly like decay? Because what shifts is not the hardware in your head. It is the habit running on it. Attention behaves less like a fixed organ and more like a footpath worn through tall grass. Walk the same route 1,000 times and it wears bare and smooth. Stop walking it, and the grass creeps back over it. That heavy feeling of rot is really just a very well-trodden path. In a minute, I will show you the single experiment that made me stop trusting my own boredom. It quietly flips this whole story. Because the trouble was never that you cannot focus. It is that focusing suddenly feels wrong, sluggish, almost physically dull, next to what you had been feeding your mind. But first, let us follow the evidence one honest question at a time, and let the surprise land where it should. First question: does scrolling actually shrink your attention span? Careful scientists hedge here, because attention is not one thing you can clock with a stopwatch. What the studies do show plainly is a switching cost. Every time you flick away and back, you pay a small tax in lost time and fresh errors. That tax is real, it is well documented, and it stacks up far faster than it ever feels like it should. Picture it happening. You are mid-sentence in a book when a buzz pulls you away. Come back, and your mind has to reload the whole scene. Who is speaking, where you were, what actually mattered. Research on interrupted work finds that re-entry takes genuine effort. Do it 30 times an hour and you are not really reading. You are just clearing your throat, over and over, and quietly calling it focus. Second question: why is stopping so absurdly hard? Here is where your reward system walks in. Dopamine is not really a pleasure chemical, it is a prediction signal. The neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz mapped this. Your dopamine spikes hardest, not when the reward finally arrives, but at the surprise of it. And a feed is engineered to be one small surprise stacked on top of the next, forever. Think about a slot machine. Pay out every single time and you would get bored fast. Pay out never and you would walk away. The whole trap is the maybe. Sometimes a little jackpot, usually nothing, and you can never predict which pull lands it. That unpredictable schedule is the single most powerful pattern for keeping any creature yanking a lever. Your feed runs that exact trick on you all day long. So your brain quietly learns a lesson you never signed up for. Something new is always one thumb flick away. Reviews of heavy digital media use tie this reward loop to stronger urges to check and refresh. This is not weakness, and it is not a character flaw. It is your reward system doing precisely the job it evolved to do, dropped into an environment your ancestors never met. The wiring is fine. The training is the problem. Now watch the two threads knot together. The switching tax drains your focus in the moment. The reward training reshapes what you are even willing to focus on at all. Separately, each is merely annoying. Together they explain that very modern ache, sitting down to do something genuinely good for you and feeling a strange bodily resistance, as if the task itself were broken. It is not broken. Your point of comparison quietly moves. And here is the catch, the headline skip, the experiment that broke my trust in boredom. When your reward system adjusts to a constant drip of surprise, Ordinary tasks do not actually get harder. They get slower by contrast. A book is not boring. It is simply quieter than the fireworks you handed yourself an hour earlier. The rot everyone dreads turns out to be a shifted baseline, not a wound. A shifted baseline is a completely different animal from decay. Decay means something is destroyed. A baseline is just where your normal currently sits, and normal can drift back. It is the same reason the first coffee after a week off tastes shockingly bitter again. Your palate reset, not your tongue. Your attention, the research hints, behaves far more like a palate than like a scar. And that single distinction changes the entire fix. Which brings us to the part almost nobody says out loud. The fix is not willpower, and the timeline is shorter than you would guess. If this has been genuinely useful so far, subscribing helps the channel keep making it. Because gritting your teeth against the feed rarely holds for long. What works is gently boring your reward system and letting your baseline settle back down on its own. So let us get specific. Start with the smallest, sturdiest lever there is, friction. You do not have to delete a single app. You just make the reach slightly harder. Slide the tempting ones off your first screen. Leave the phone in another room while you eat. Every extra second of effort hands the deliberate part of your brain a chance to catch up before your thumb quietly decides for you. Next, the underrated one, practice being unstimulated on purpose. Stand in a line and simply stand there. Walk with no earbuds in. Let the wait for the kettle be nothing at all. These tiny gaps feel unbearable at first, which is exactly the point of them. You are teaching your reward system that quiet is survivable, even pleasant. You are turning the fireworks down so that a candle can look bright again. Then guard one block of single tasking a day. Just one. Choose something with a clear beginning and an end. A chapter, a recipe, a real conversation, and do only that. When the pull to switch arrives, and it will notice it and stay put. Interruption research suggests the deep, satisfying kind of focus does not vanish. It just needs a few uninterrupted minutes to warm itself back up. And the timeline? This is the hopeful part. Because you are resetting a baseline rather than healing an injury, people often notice the sharpest edge of the craving softening within days of steady friction, not months. The research on habit and reward cannot hand you a calendar date, but it strongly suggests your attention is far more elastic than that ugly little word rot ever let you believe. Now the honest costs, because this is not a clean win for everyone. Much of the research here is correlational, which means we cannot always tell whether scrolling caused the change or the change drove the scrolling. And for some people, heavy scrolling is not the real problem at all. It is a way to cope with something underneath, like anxiety or low mood. Friction alone will not touch that layer. So here is the doable exit. If cutting back leaves you noticeably calmer and sharper, wonderful, keep going. But if the low mood, the anxiety, or the compulsion stays exactly where it was no matter what you try, that is a signal worth taking to a qualified professional, not a personal failing. Tools for attention are not treatments for what might sit beneath it. Match the fix to the actual problem. So back to that wet cotton head we started with. Is your brain rotting? The evidence says no, not literally and not permanently. What is really happening is a well-worn trail and a shifted baseline, and both of those can move back the other way. The scariest word in the whole story turned out to be the least accurate one. Your attention is not decaying. It is just waiting for somewhere quieter to land. Your one move this week. Pick a single daily gap you would normally flood with scrolling. The line, the walk, the wait, and leave it deliberately empty. Only that one. Feel the itch rise, and let it pass without reaching for anything. That small, uncomfortable pause is your baseline beginning to drift back. Not willpower, just practice. Give the grass its chance to grow.